Hello, Gail.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us. This is the first episode of our podcast, which is Conversationalist, and you're the first guest. So, welcome again. Good to have you
Thank
here.
you. Thanks very much for having me. I'm delighted to be a guest, but even more delighted to be your first guest. It's amazing.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And what we are talking today is purpose and authenticity in leadership. Before we actually get into this, Gail, why don't you give us a little bit of your introduction? Where you are from, what you're currently doing.
Yeah. So I'm Gail Logan, and I am a leadership coach. And I have been working in tech or in and around tech for a long time. So I would say leading in tech for about 20 years, and worked for a number of different tech companies. So you and I obviously met at Adobe, and I was at Adobe for a long time. So I worked, I actually still can't believe that, 16 years. I mean, I don't
Gosh.
know that. I don't know how that's possible. Like, I can't believe I'm old enough to have worked somewhere for 16 years, but there you go. So 16 years at Adobe. And then prior to that, I worked for a couple of other tech companies. So I worked for GE, worked for Fujitsu as well. But I always say that Adobe is really where I learned how to lead, because
Mm,
prior to joining Adobe, I had been in, I guess you would call them leadership positions. I was, I was a team leader, a supervisor, and then when I went to GE, I was a manager. But it was really Adobe that I really kind of got grounded and got to grips with, what does it really mean to be a leader? What does it mean to be accountable, to take responsibility, to measure what's going on? So, I don't think I knew what a KPI was until I joined Adobe, and I learned all about that very quickly. But so did, led and managed teams my whole career, and always really been in tech. I spent a little bit of time in logistics before I got into tech, but pretty much my whole career I've been in tech, and always really, right from the very beginning, like right from the early days, always in some way leading other people. So I kind of, fell into that very, very quickly. And then in 2016, I made, I guess it was a brave decision. It was a decision anyway.
mm.
I made the decision to leave all that behind and go and do something completely different. And so now I still work with people in tech, but I run my own business now. And I was lucky enough, actually, while I still worked for Adobe, to be introduced to coactive coaching. So I was one of the first leaders at Adobe to go through the Coaching for Leaders program. So
Mm.
Adobe brought CTI in and took a bunch of leaders through their Coaching for Leaders programs, the Professional Coaching for Leaders program. And when I did that, I just fell in love with coaching, and I suddenly realized, it taken me all that time to realize what it was I wanted to do. And it was having that introduction, starting to understand and get some insight into what it is to be a coach, starting to learn about that and apply that. And I was just completely hooked and wanted to learn more, wanted to figure out, what else can I do with this? Went and did the external course, and then just going through my own journey, because when you're learning to be a coach, you go through your own coaching journey while you do that.
Very
And
true.
that just led me to then realizing that's what I wanted to do. So I set up my own business, and that's where I am now. So that's what I do. So I now have a business. Seems to be going quite well, and I now coach people. A lot of them are leaders, not all of them, but most of them are leaders. But I now
Hmm.
coach other people. So that's my story.
Excellent. Excellent. So, how did coaching happen, Gail? Was it something to do with, developing people? Was it something to do with leading by example? What exactly made you to drift from very settled job towards coaching precisely?
Because I realized, when you go through your own journey, when you're learning to be a coach,
Mm,
anything that I do with my clients, everything that I do with my clients are all things that I've done and been through myself. So I don't ask my clients to do anything that I've not done myself. And so you go through your own voyage of discovery, if you like, and
very
you
true.
learn so much about who you are, and more importantly, what lights you up and what
Hmm.
yeah, what lights you up, and what makes you jump out of bed in the morning, what energizes you. And I quickly realized when I started learning to be a coach, and I was working with you call them practice clients, right? So so you have little guinea pigs that you work with, and started kind of still finding my feet, but started applying the principles of coactive coaching and working with other people, and just realizing very quickly that this is what I'm meant to do. Like I never knew that up until that point. I've spent my whole
I so
career
agree.
working for great companies and doing good stuff, and largely enjoying my career. It's not like I didn't enjoy my career, but I suddenly landed on something that just really brought me to life and energized me, and I realized I was good at it as well. I was having impact on people, and I was like, I just couldn't get enough of it. It's like, and now I know, having done this for a few years as well, now I just know that this is what I'm meant to do. It's what I'm meant to do. It's why
Excellent, Gail. And I think I can completely resonate this fact with you, because I remember something like this happened with me very briefly. I did my engineering, and after that I said, hey, I don't want to be into engineering. I wanted to do something else.
Yeah.
And that was a hunch. Can I define it logically? I don't think so, but I knew that I didn't want to do that. And it got into a bit of a family drama, but I think I did fairly well for myself after that, maybe. So I can completely relate to this.
Yeah, and it's interesting because sometimes we need to make a decision,
Yeah,
even if it's the wrong decision.
I agree.
Sometimes we need to make the decision to get more information to help us figure out what the next step is, because sometimes we get stuck because we're frightened to make the next move or to take the step. But then what happens is we stay stuck, right? We stay stuck,
absolutely.
we stay scared, and we don't move forward. Whereas sometimes it's better just to say, do you know what, I am going to try this, and it might not work, it might fail, I might fail, but at least then you know, and at least then you've got that information and you can do something else. But at least you're moving, and you're still making progress even if you fail.
I think that's a very interesting point of yours, Gail, and I think that's what is giving me a segue to my next question. Is what will actually make me keep moving? That is, we are talking about leading with purpose and authenticity.
Yeah.
What is the purpose? And if you talk about leadership from that perspective, how does purpose and leadership come together? You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, well, so for me, any great leader has a great vision, right? And I think, if you were to think about the leaders that so either leaders that you know of, you might not know them personally, but leaders that you know of, or leaders that you know personally, the ones that inspire you, the ones that light you up, the ones that you want to work for, right? They usually have two things. They usually have a great vision, and they have purpose. And so I think purpose and vision for me go hand in hand. But for me, purpose is all about why are you here? What's the impact that you want to have, and who do you want to have that impact on? And when you have clarity of that, and you're really, it's really about your why, right? What's your why? Why are you here? Why do you do what you do?
Exactly.
Right. And when you have clarity on that, and you create your vision based on that, and you're clear what your North Star is, where you're trying to get to, and when you can clearly communicate that to other people, then that's when you will have people that want to follow you and want to be led.
I agree.
Right? Because people generally, in my experience anyway, people don't want someone to tell them what to do all the time. Like, I think often, that's a surefire way to turn people off, right? To be micromanaged. Nobody likes being
exactly.
Exactly.
Right? Exactly.
Where people thrive, where people thrive is when they're set up for success, and they're really clear. This is the vision, and by the way, that's a great vision, and I am fully on board with that vision. I want to get there too, right? So because people follow people because they want to, right? That's what Simon Sinek says. So I have a vision. I want to get there too, and because I know what the vision is, and I know what the direction is, I know where we're trying to get to, I feel confident about what I'm responsible for and the decisions that I am responsible for making. Because great leaders don't do everything themselves. Like, great leaders inspire other people to come with them on the journey and empower them to make their own decisions. And that's when people thrive. Like, people thrive when they feel like they are able to make an impact. They are able to make a difference. they have autonomy. They can make decisions for themselves. They can use their brain, right? That in a leader is just such an important quality to be able to do that. But it's all rooted in being clear where we're trying to get to, and not just trying to get somewhere for the sake of getting somewhere. Why are we even going there? Like why? And that's where purpose comes in. Yeah. So for me, those two things are, they are tied together, and they're really important.
Exactly.
And all leaders need to be able to kind of get their head around that, I think.
Completely with you, Gail. And I remember I was talking to one of my ex-bosses some time back, and I adore him as a leader. I actually asked him the same thing, what's your purpose as a leader? So he actually gave me a pretty interesting perspective. He said, Anshul, whenever I actually speak to somebody whom I'm not really leading, technically mentoring, I want him to actually leave with more questions than more answers. And if I do that, I think my purpose is solved, or I have achieved my purpose in keeping that individual curious.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Wow. I'm like, I never even thought like this. So leadership is not always about giving answers, not always about telling what they need to do or what people need to do. Leadership from a purpose standpoint is giving them a perspective, giving them a vision, and giving them that intent of getting forward, moving forward. So I'm completely with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that whole thing about you want your people to have more questions, because you want to spark their curiosity, because if they're not curious, then they're not engaged, and you want people to be engaged. Yeah,
definitely. Absolutely. Excellent. Okay, what's next? So next is, and I think that's one of my very, very close to heart topic, that's called authenticity. And I think I was reading this somewhere, authenticity is on the far right and fakeness on the far left, and
authenticity is on the far right, and what is on the left?
Fakeness, which is of course the opposite of the authenticity, right? In that whole chart. And what I've seen, most of the people, or rather most of the leaders, actually swing extremes. And that's where I have also felt that whenever you read the books on leadership, we say, hey, be authentic, be an authentic leader. And then there is a different school of thought which say, hey, don't be a completely authentic leader as well. So it's a double-edged sword. And how do we define what authenticity is exactly? Because it's pretty subjective. I don't want to call that to be vague, but it's pretty subjective.
And so the way that I think about authenticity, so I am hugely passionate about authenticity. I think it is so important. But I understand why you would say it's a double-edged sword, and I get that, and I understand that. And when I think of authenticity, I think about being true to me, so being true to myself. And I think authenticity is about being true to yourself. Now, so does that mean, and with authenticity comes vulnerability, right? Because you can't be authentic without being vulnerable. And I get the whole thing about, well, I can't make myself vulnerable in certain situations. Now, I agree with that. And, my thing isn't about, it's authenticity for authenticity's sake, and you must be authentic at all costs, and under no circumstances should you never not be authentic. And so I think there has to be judgment has to come into this. But the thing that I would say on it is, because you don't want to bare your soul to all and sundry, and there are certain situations where that just wouldn't be the right thing to do. However, what I do think is that it's about being consciously aware, right? And because you might choose, so in a certain situation, you might choose not to be vulnerable, not to be authentic, because your judgment and your common sense is just telling you that's just not the right thing to do in this particular situation. But it's about being consciously aware that you're doing that. And that's the difference, because if you're consciously aware that you're doing that, then that's a choice. And you may choose in certain situations and for particular reasons not to be true to yourself. So for example, like the best example I can give on that is, you might be in a role that you know isn't right for you, that you're not comfortable in, that isn't giving you what you want, isn't aligned with your values, isn't allowing you to be on purpose, doesn't light you up, right? But we could be in the middle of a global pandemic. Jobs might be thin on the ground, might have, a loan to pay off or a mortgage to pay, or, so sometimes you still have to make sensible decisions. So sometimes you might need to make sensible decisions around that. But if you are aware that's what you're doing, then I think that is okay, as long as you don't, continue that forever. Where it's a problem is when you're not consciously aware that you are just trying to fit in. You're doing you're doing what you think other people think you should do, not what you want to do. That you think you need to be a certain way to get promoted, or you think you need to be a certain way to keep in with your boss, or you need to, act a certain way in order to keep your job, whatever it might be. But if you don't realize and you don't notice, you're not conscious that you're doing that, it's going to be exhausting, right? Because people do this all the time, right? People mask
Correct.
all the time,
Yeah.
and people want to be in the inner circle. They want to be connected to other people. They want to, human beings have an innate need for connection, right? So I learned that from Brené Brown, who I think is amazing. So as humans, we want to be connected, and sometimes being authentic is the hardest thing to do, because we feel, well, if I speak my truth here, they're going to push me out of the circle. I'm going to have to leave that circle. And that's really all desire connection and to be connected. But for me, it's about really knowing your truth, knowing your values, knowing your purpose, knowing what lights you up, knowing what your vision is, ignoring your inner critic, which is hard, but learning how to do that, standing in your strengths, right? Really standing and owning your strengths and bringing you to everything that you do. And it's not easy, it's hard, because we're conditioned to look at what everybody else is doing and look over there. Oh, well, that person's doing that, and maybe I should do it like that. Maybe I should be more like them. But the more that we do that, right, the more that we compare ourselves to other people, the less we stand in our own strengths, and that's the exact opposite of what we should do. Like we need to know and understand intimately what we're good at, what we bring to the table, what our contribution is, and own that and deliver that. And for me, that's being authentic, because everyone comes to this planet with gifts, talents, skills, strengths.
Correct.
And the sad thing is, most people spend so much time comparing themselves to other people, they don't realize what they already have. And that is
exactly
really sad. Yeah. So that,
I think I completely resonate your point. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I completely understand the point which you made. I think I can't be authentic, or rather wisely authentic, till the time I'm not corely self-aware. So I think that's an interesting point you made.
You can't be authentic if you don't know yourself. Because
exactly.
Otherwise, well, what is it for you to be authentic? Like you can't be authentic if you don't know yourself.
Exactly. Because then you are confused. What's authentic? You don't even know, because there is no standardization there. So yeah. Completely agree.
Yeah. And a lot of people think they are being authentic, but they actually don't know what it is for them to be authentic. They haven't done the self-discovery to really drill into, acknowledge and understand, who am I when I'm being authentic? What is important to me? What matters most to me?
Exactly. Yeah. Move to the next question. So Gail, I understand, you are in leadership coaching, and you coach women to be effective leaders. And tell us something about that. What kind of coaching you do specifically, and when you talk about women, do you see there is a different kind of a leadership journey for women versus man, or their struggles or their journey is more or less same?
So I think, well, first of all, I'm a leadership coach, and I work with people
Mm.
that typically that are in leadership positions. And the two things that people come to me generally for, not entirely, but usually,
Mm-hmm.
are self-doubt and
Mm.
overwhelm, right? So self-doubt and overwhelm. They're the two big topics that people come to me for. And I tend to work with women. I attract women. I think I attract women because I've been a woman in a leadership position, so a non-technical leader in tech, and a woman, right? So
Mm.
I think I attract people similar to me, that because they see me and think, all right, well, you've been in that position, so I attract people to me like that. So I would say about 80 to 90% of the people that I work with are women. I do work with men as well, though. So I'm not exclusive to women. I just seem to
Mm.
attract women. So I work with men as well. And now, so my thinking on this is coloured by the fact that people come to me usually to work on confidence, and I talk about that a lot. So I talk about how I help people with confidence. So my experience is coloured and shaped by that. And so this might not be a completely true reflection, but in my experience from the people that I've worked with, men and women suffer from self-doubt in equal measure,
Mm.
and overwhelm. So self-doubt and overwhelm, men and women struggle with that in just the same way. And when I coach men or women on this, the struggles are the same, the
Mm-hmm.
challenges are the same, the thoughts are the same, the fears are the same. There's no difference. I haven't seen any difference, but that could
Got
just
it.
be the people that come to me. So I can only share what my experience is, but that's my experience. There is no difference. I think the challenges that women face are usually slightly different when it comes to overwhelm, not self-doubt. So if we put self-doubt and confidence to one side, because I see that that women and men struggle in the same way with that, in my experience.
Same way. Mm. Mm.
But overwhelm, I think women have more overwhelm than men do, because unfortunately we still live in a world where women still have the lion's share of responsibility with family. And and women biologically have children, right? So women give birth to children, and so there so there's a whole thing around that. And I have never done that, so it's difficult for me to speak about that. But my own personal view on this, women are amazing leaders, right? Women, in general, in equal measure, the same as men, can be great leaders. So that I don't think whether you're a woman or a man, it doesn't, women and men can all be great leaders. I think that to give women the same opportunity as men, I think organizations need to be thinking differently. And I think this is always on what women need to be doing differently, and how women need to change, and how women need to be different in some way. Now, that's not to take away from the fact that in equal measure men and women can struggle with confidence, and you can work on that. But I also think that because women still have the lion's share of responsibility for family, and I'm not saying that across the board, because I know that that's not 100% true, but I would say in general that still seems to
Correct.
be how society works. I think that
True.
to really take advantage of women in the workplace, and to give women the opportunity to lead more, and to see more women in leadership positions, I think organizations need to be thinking a little bit differently about, how do they make that easier? Because we want the human race to continue, right? So women are going to continue to have children. So how
True.
can we change our society, and organizations in particular, to make that work better? And I think, there needs to be some sort of shift there. And I actually think, the whole situation with COVID in some ways might accelerate that a little bit, because it's forced organizations to work
Mm.
differently. And organizations are now realizing, actually, we can do this differently. It doesn't have to be the way it's always been. And it'll be interesting to see, what impact that has going forward.
Great point. I think I completely agree.
No, just that I'm just conscious that what I'm sharing with you is very much coloured by my own experience
Of
and by
course,
the clients that I
of
work with.
course.
But that's all that's all I can tell you is, well, in my experience, that's what I see, and I definitely see challenges with with confidence in men just the same as women, just the same. But it
Got it.
might be that
Got
they
it.
come to me for that because they know that's what I do, and so therefore that's what I see.
Completely understand. So
Yeah.
I think you made some relevant points over here, Gail. Now if we see there are a lot of people, there are a lot of women around us, who are on that journey to be a leader, who
Mm.
are either they are starting as an emerging leader, or they are already entered in that leadership domain. What kind of advices you have for them, that what they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing as well?
Yeah.
What would be like top threes for both?
Uh, I don't know if I have a top three for both, but the one thing that comes up for me is you've got to stand in your strengths first and foremost, right? So
Mm,
so you really need to figure out, it's not about emulating other people per se, and that's not about, I'm not saying you shouldn't have role models, because I think role models are really important, and sometimes you don't know what you should try to do if you haven't seen somebody else do it. So I think that is important.
absolutely.
But it's about finding finding your way and remembering that it's really okay. I wish somebody had told this or had said this to me 20 years ago, right? Because it's taken me all this time to figure out this. And maybe this just comes with my own experience, and maybe I'm just more confident
Sure.
now. But I know that, 20 years
Hmm.
ago, I didn't think it was okay to be me. I didn't think it was
Mm,
okay to be me. I thought I had to be some, idea that I had made up in my head of what leaders were like. It's taken me a long, long time to realize that actually, who you are, the skills that you have, the strengths that you bring, that's what makes you a leader. Because and you're in talent acquisition, so you're going to get this, right? But we don't hire people to be like somebody
yeah,
else. We hire people for the skills and
exactly.
strengths that they've got. And I think if again, in organizations, if we could reinforce that more, because one of the things I'm
Mm,
really really passionate about is, this happens in organizations all the time, and I am guilty of doing this as a leader myself. I would never do it now, but I know I have done this in the past. Is really focusing on and drilling into, okay, so here's some things that you're good at. Now let's really get into all the things that you suck at, that you are hopeless at, that you're not good
mm,
at. And conversations like that leave you feeling like you're broken, right? I actually said this
exactly.
to a client recently. I said this to a client. I said, "You are not broken." And this was a guy, actually. So one of the few men that I coach, right? This was a guy, and I said, "You are not broken." And he looked at me. He looked at me as if I had just made this incredulous revelation, and he was like,
Mm,
he's like, "Well, no one has ever said that before." I was like, "Well, I'm saying it now, and it's true. You are not broken." Because I just know that I've had many conversations over the course of my career where there's so much focus on, well, we need to fix your gaps. We need to we need to fix you, like that. That's what
exactly.
nobody actually says
Mm,
that. Like, they don't say we need to fix you, but that's the way the conversation goes. And it's like, well, you're not good enough the way you are, so we need to fix you. And it's just, in terms of the mindset and your self-confidence, if all you hear, and I will actually put my hand up and say, I'm the sort of person that will hear that more readily than what have I also just told you about all the things you are good at. But I will focus in on the one thing, the one thing that somebody said I wasn't very
which
good
I'm
at.
not good at.
That's what I'll remember and take away. But I think, great leaders will really think about what are the strengths and skills that they need around them to be successful, and how can they build and create a team that's going to bring that, right? So it's not about hiring in my own image, right, and bringing in 10 people the same as me. It's about thinking about, what are my biases, where what are my strengths, and what do I need to bring in that are going to complement my strengths? What do I need to bring in that's going to bring things that I don't have? And being confident enough to be able to say, I'm actually not good at that. I need somebody on my team that can do that because I'm rubbish at that. So I'm not going to beat myself up about it and be thinking, well, gosh, you know, this is a big problem. I'm going to do something else about it, because nobody can do 100% of things 100% effectively. Like, that's just unrealistic.
Exactly.
You know, you want to hone in and be really good at the things that are your, you know, your superpowers. You know, identify your superpowers and make them towering strengths that you then become known for, and that you build your brand on, right? Because brand as a leader, you know, is everything. You know, what is your brand? What do you want to be known for? And that's another reason why
Exactly.
purpose is so important. What's your purpose, and how do you build that into your brand so that you become known for something? You don't want to be a jack of all trades. Like, you want to be known for the person that can come in and, you know, do whatever it is. But you know, what's your superpower? What do you want to be known for? What do you want other people to say about you?
No, I think amazing point you have made, Gail, and if I reflect back as well, that's a conversation we always have. Development opportunities, a development conversation, a development check-in, right? So I think that has gone into our DNA, that we always talk about what is the developmental aspect, you know, we need to see in that individual, whether it is a guy or a girl, or rather a man or a woman. And second point, which you rightly made, is about authenticity and purpose, you know, coming together to actually make you more self-aware that what you really need to actually do and be, and how to move forward around it. So amazing input, Gail, on this. And I think with that, we have come to the last leg of our conversation. Thank you so much for your time. I think the conversation which we had is one self-reflectory, at least to me, about the purpose and authenticity. And I think you have made some really valuable points on looking at self-doubt, which we generally call that to be an imposter syndrome nowadays, and overwhelmingness, because I think so much of an anxiety going on because of so many things that we are on the edge of becoming overwhelmed everywhere. Whether it is COVID, whether it is job security or something else. But I think one thing which you really made a point is have a self-confidence in yourself.
Absolutely. It's the, like, you know, if you don't believe in yourself, how is anyone else ever going to? That's the thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's the nail in kind of a comment. You need to believe in yourself before the world believes in you.
Absolutely. Definitely.
Perfect. Gail, thank you so much for joining us today. It was lovely speaking with you, and take care of yourself.
Thank you. You're very welcome. No problem.